The millionaire arrives early and is shocked by a female beggar he never expected to see there. Leonard Carter's heart pounded hard against his ribs as he stepped through the grand gates of his sprawling estate. Early, for once. Too early, maybe. The blinds were still drawn, the house swallowed in shadows that didn't feel like home anymore. But then, something caught his eye. A figure crouched by the old stone fountain, ragged and shaking under a threadbare coat. A woman with wild, tangled hair, tangled around a pale, dirt-streaked face. A beggar here, on his property? His chest tightened. His breath hitched like a cry caught in his throat. The air felt thick, heavy with silence, broken only by the soft murmur of his twins' voices coming from inside. He followed the sounds, his steps hesitant but driven by something raw, something scared. Through the wide window, he saw them, Ethan and Lily. His kids, the only living pieces of Emily. His wife, the woman he lost to the cruel. They were sitting close together on the worn rug, not playing, not laughing, just holding on to one another, like they were clinging to drifting pieces of hope. And there, kneeling beside them, was the beggar woman. She wasn't just sitting there. She was gently brushing Lily's tangled hair out of her eyes, whispering something soft and kind. Leonard's blood ran cold. Why was this woman here? How had she even gotten inside? His mind snapped. Hadn't he locked the doors? Who was she? Fear flickered, but beneath that, something unexpected stirred, a strange aching pull. This woman looked like she had been swallowed by pain too. A mirror to his own grief, twisted by exile and silence. Hardly daring to breathe, Leonard slid open the door and stepped in. The air inside was colder than outside, cut by the chill of absence. Ethan's head snapped up. Lily's gaze turned sharp and wary. The woman stood slowly, her eyes meeting his. They were bright, haunted, and fierce all at once. She looked nothing like the polished guests or staff usually moving through these halls, but something about her felt like a spark in the endless dark. "Who are you?" Leonard's voice was hoarse. His hands trembled, gripping the doorframe like a lifeline. She hesitated, then looked back at the twins, her voice breaking as she whispered, "I'm someone who's lost and found them here." The moment shattered like glass. Questions collided in Leonard's head. How had she appeared here? What was she doing with his children? Did she know something about Emily he didn't? The house was no longer just a shelter. It was a riddle, wrapped in shadows, secrets clawing their way to the surface. Outside, a wind howled, rattling the windows like a warning. Leonard's mind raced. Was this stranger a threat? Or maybe a key to the pieces he couldn't put together? His chest pressed tight, the lump in his throat grew bigger. The tears wouldn't fall, at least not yet. And then, a sudden chime echoed through the mansion, his phone lighting up with a message from an unknown number. Leonard's fingers froze. The screen flashed with words that made his blood turn to ice, words about hospital negligence, about a truth no one dared to face. His world cracked further. Which side of the broken past would this woman unlock? Would this chance meeting heal the wounds or rip open deeper scars better left alone? Leonard didn't know, but one thing was clear. Nothing here was what it seemed. Not anymore. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss out on any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Leonard stood frozen, the weight of the moment heavy on his shoulders. The beggar woman's fiery gaze locked onto his, unflinching, unwavering. It felt like she could see right through him. Anxiety twisted tighter in his chest, beating in rhythm with his racing heart. He wanted to shout, to demand she leave his home. But then he remembered Ethan and Lily, their innocent faces, their trust. His voice came out strained. "What do you mean, found them?" The woman stepped forward cautiously, her hands trembling slightly. "They're special, aren't they?" she replied, glancing back at the twins, who were now curled up like tiny, fragile leaves in the wind. "They're connected to something bigger, something painful." She paused, her breath hitching, as if words stuck in her throat. Before Leonard could process her cryptic words, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen, a cacophony of shattering glass and splintering wood. His heart raced, and he spun around, eyes darting toward the source of the noise. The air felt thick, electric with tension. He had locked the doors. How could anything break in here? Ethan let out a small whimper, and Lily clutched her brother's arm tight, eyes wide with fear. Leonard's instincts kicked in. "Stay here," he commanded, though his voice trembled. He didn't have time to consider the beggar woman. She might be a threat, or worse, a distraction. He bolted toward the kitchen, the sense of dread swelling, clawing at him as he pushed through the doorway. The sight before him sent shockwaves through his body. A figure stood amidst the chaos, a tall man dressed in dark clothes, a mask covering his face. Broken dishes lay scattered at his feet, sparkling like dangerous stars. Leonard's stomach twisted, adrenaline surged through his veins. "Who the hell are you?" he shouted. The man held up his hands, palms out. "I'm not here to hurt you, I swear." His voice was rough, edged with desperation. The moment hung in the air, fraught with tension. I need to talk." Leonard shook his head, disbelief flooding in. "Talk? Here? With my kids in the next room? You picked the wrong house, buddy." But then something caught the man's eye, and he pointed urgently toward the window. The branches of the old oak tree, swaying ominously outside. "We don't have much time. They're coming." Leonard's blood ran cold. Who was they? A possibility began creeping into his mind, dark and twisting. Had he been living in a bubble, unaware of something lurking just outside his perfect life? He was about to question the intruder when a loud crash shook the walls again. A dark figure, unmistakably cloaked, rushed into view outside, moving like a shadow against the pale morning light. "No!" Leonard shouted, panic rising like bile in his throat. "Get away from here!" But it was too late. The window shattered under a sudden weight, fragments exploding inward, glittering crazily. He felt something sharp slice across his face, a searing pain instantly ignited. Leonard stumbled back, blood spilling from his cheek. Amid the chaos, he heard a voice, the beggar woman's voice, screaming, a sound raw and piercing, cutting through the madness. "Leonard, look out!" He turned just in time to see the man lunging toward him, desperation etched on every feature. And then, a loud bang, like thunder, echoed through the room, drowning everything else out. For a split second, silence reigned, and then Leonard's world collapsed, imploding in on itself as realization crashed over him like a tidal wave. Blood pooled beneath him, and shadows danced as reality flickered. The man was someone he used to know, someone from the past he had buried in anguish, in rage. As darkness encroached on his vision, he understood. The lies, the secrets, the anguish had all just begun to unravel. And the woman was right. Nothing was what it seemed. Nothing at all. Leonard felt the shockwave through him. A sharp pain flared on his cheek. His vision swam and he staggered back. The man, someone from his past, had lunged at him. Then everything went black. When he opened his eyes again, he was on the floor, dizzy and disorientated. A thick silence surrounded him, broken only by the distant whimper of Ethan and Lily in the other room. Panic clawed at his spine as he struggled to focus. The beggar woman was bent over him, her wild hair framing a face that was more than just a stranger. It held familiarity, something unfurling in his mind like smoke. "Stay with me, Leonard." Her voice was urgent, an anchor in a storm. He blinked slowly, trying to shake off the haze. "What happened?" he rasped, blood still staining his hands. "It's not safe." She glanced at the shattered window, fear blazing in her eyes. "We have to go." "Go where?" Leonard opened his mouth to protest, the weight of the world crushing him down. It didn't make sense. His children. He needed to protect them. Ethan, Lily. Then he felt it, the growing coldness. Not from the air, this was deeper, a void inside him growing more profound. They're okay," the woman interrupted, forcing him to meet her gaze. "But we're not safe here. You have to trust me." Trust? It felt impossible, but something in her eyes struck a chord. They flashed with something he recognized: pain. "What do you know about them?" "Everything," she whispered, her voice trembling. "And you too." Just then, a sound shattered the air. The front door creaked open against a sudden gust. Leonard's breath hitched. Shadows danced at the threshold, figures cloaked in darkness entering the room. He recognized one immediately, though years had passed. Mark. An old friend turned stalker, a friend Leonard had thought was gone forever. "Hello, Leonard," Mark sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "Did you miss me?" Leonard's heart raced with confusion, his anger, fighting against the reality, collapsing around him. "What are you doing here?" Mark stepped into the light, revealing a bruised face filled with fury. "You think you could just forget, walk away?" He held something shiny in his hand, the glint catching Leonard's eye. "You owe me, Leonard. You owe all of us." The words struck like a lightning bolt. Memories pushed through the fog. An accident, a cover-up. His heart sank. He had buried that part of his life to shield his children. But it all came rushing back. His hands shook, realizing this was more than just a confrontation. His past was clawing its way into the present, with consequences more dire than he ever anticipated. "I have nothing to give you," Leonard spat, fighting against the rising tide of fear. He turned to the woman. "What do you know?" Instead of answering, she moved in front of Ethan and Lily, fierce determination written on her face. "You don't understand the real danger. You're not just fighting for your kids. You're fighting for the truth." "Truth?" Mark laughed bitterly. "Such a naive word. What's the truth, Leonard?" The air grew thick, suffocating him. The beggar woman spoke again, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Your children are tied to everything, Leonard. Your choices, my pain. It means something." Before Leonard could process it, the window shattered further, sending shards flying. A rush of wind howled into the room. But as his heart raced, he felt a different kind of chill, like something was awakening, something darker than he could grasp. Just then, the children cried out, breaking the tension as they clung to the beggar woman, eyes wide with fear. "Daddy!" In that moment, everything shifted. Leonard's world flipped on its axis. Mark was no longer just a ghost of his past. He was a harbinger of a truth Leonard had tried to bury. The stakes were higher than he understood. "What you thought was protection," Mark's voice cut through the fog, taunting. "It was just a trap. It's time for the real game to begin." Suddenly, everything Leonard believed shattered. The fabric of his life, twisted with hidden truths and shadows. He blinked, eyes wide, feeling the walls close in. He realized now nothing was safe. Nothing was as it seemed. As darkness loomed, Leonard sensed the ground shift beneath him. Each moment pulsed with danger, a horror only heightened by the palpable tension in the room. What had he unleashed? What would he have to face next? the answers hid in the echoes of his past, lurking just out of reach. Leonard's heart raced as the shadows of Mark loomed over him, taunting him with the ghosts of a past that threatened to drown him. The shackles of that history felt tighter with every mocking word. "You owe me, Leonard. You owe all of us." He wanted to scream, to deny it, but the truth lurked in the silence, an invisible weight pressing down on his chest. Ethan and Lily huddled behind the beggar woman, their innocent faces painted with fear, and the image of their trust shattered Leonard's resolve. Mark stepped closer, the shine of the blade in his hand glinting like a dying star. "Your kids shouldn't have to pay for your mistakes, but this time, they will." "Stop!" Leonard shouted, instinctively moving to shield the twins. The air crackled with tension, a beast waiting to strike. The moments stretched impossibly long, and in that chaos, he caught the woman's gaze for a heartbeat. They connected, an understanding shared pain coursing between them. He realized then they were all bound by a web of lies, but she knew something more. Just then, the floorboards creaked behind them. Everyone turned, their breaths stalling. A fresh figure stepped into the room. Silhouetted against the light, his father. The last person Leonard expected to see, Harold Carter, his face lined with the weight of ages, entered like a ghost returning to haunt his living son. "Leonard," he said, his voice gravelly, each word trembling with urgency. "You have to listen to me." "What are you doing here?" Leonard's voice shook, a tempest of anger and confusion swirling inside him. "I don't have time for this." But the desperation in his father's eyes turned the air electric. "You don't have time, or you don't want to face the truth? It's time you face what you've buried." Mark's laughter sliced through the tension. "You really think meddling is going to save him?" He edged closer, the blade glinting menacingly. "What are you hiding, old man?" In that wild instant, as screams collided with the encroaching shadows, the beggar woman stepped forward. "Stop! You have no idea what you're doing!" And then, everything erupted. A deafening explosion, a shattering of glass, wood splintering, all collapsing in an instant. The wall behind them buckled inward. A vortex of chaos and dust spiraled around the room. Harold was flung back, crashing against the opposite wall. Leonard tried to reach for the twins, but the wave of destruction swept him off his feet, pulling him into a whirlpool of noise. In the next breath, it all fell still, the world spinning, reshaped. As Leonard gasped, blinking through the settling dust, he caught sight of Mark. He lay motionless, eyes wide in disbelief. An agonizing silence where his breath used to be. The blade rolled away, slipping against the wood floor, glimmering innocently. But as Leonard scanned the room, panic gripped him. The beggar woman stood amidst the wreckage, something unfathomable written on her face. "They're coming. They've found you." Leonard's mind reeled, the horror of the moment crystallizing every fear he had buried since Emily's death. "What do you mean?" he choked, dread pooling in his stomach. And then she revealed it. The truth, hiding in shaded memories. "You thought the past was finished, Leonard? You didn't bury it deep enough." Time twisted around him like a storm, and in an instant, Leonard understood. The life he built, the family he cherished, it was all a facade, fragile, ready to crumble. The twins weren't simply his children. They were the beacon for something far darker, a catastrophic result of his choices. He grasped the magnitude of her words and felt the world slip further from his grasp. "What have I done?" he gasped, horror overtaking him. But the shadows deepened, whispering secrets he wasn't ready to hear. As he searched for answers in her eyes, they flickered with recognition, pain, and something more profound. Something he had never expected. Just then, As reality twisted again, a siren wailed in the distance. The sound echoed like a death knell, ushering in something terrifying. "They're comin' for you all," she repeated, urgency drenched in every syllable. His heart pounded as the web unraveled before him. Leonard realized he wasn't just racing against a past he wanted to forget. He was standing on the precipice of a much larger nightmare. Something dark awaited outside the ruins of his life. The truth was unrelenting, and already he could feel the shadows stretching toward him, pulling him back into their depths. Leonard's heart raced as silence hung heavy in the air. The shadows seemed to stretch and move, swirling around him like a living, breathing entity. The beggar woman's eyes darted toward the doorway, the urgency palpable. "We have to move," she insisted, her voice a whisper, yet fierce enough to cut through the haze of fear. But the weight of truth bore down on him. "What truth? What are you hiding?" he pressed, desperation lacing his words. Holding his children close, he felt their small bodies trembling, their innocence wrapped in layers of horror he had tried to shield them from. Harold stirred in the corner, propping himself up against the remnants of the wall. "Leonard, listen!" A cold chill rushed through Leonard. He felt as though the ground beneath them was shifting, revealing secrets that begged to be buried deeper. He turned sharply to Mark, who lay motionless, yet the darkness felt as though it could still rise. "If he knows, what happens next?" But before anyone could answer, a sudden roar erupted outside. The sirens grew louder, piercing through the thick veil of tension. Suddenly, the front door burst open, and in walked a familiar figure, his sister, Grace. Her presence felt like a twisted mirage. How could she be here now? "Leonard," she shouted, eyes wide, scanning the chaos. "I had to come, they—" But just then, her words froze in her throat as she locked eyes with the beggar woman. For a moment, it seemed the world stood still. Bated breaths filled the room, shadows dancing manically, waiting for something to snap. Leonard opened his mouth, ready to shout her name, pull her back from whatever horror waited in this nightmare. But what unfolded next shattered his sense of reality. The beggar woman inhaled sharply, her eyes widening with recognition. "Grace? What? You know her?" Leonard's voice faltered, confusion crashing over him like a wave. The pieces, the history he thought he understood, this disheveled stranger, everything began to splinter beneath the weight of that one name. "We've been looking for you!" Grace rushed, fear clawing at her voice. You have to come with us. They're here." "Who's here?" Leonard shot back, confusion and fear mingling. "What's going on?" And then came the explosion, a shattering force of noise that sent debris flying and stung Leonard's skin, disorienting him. The neighbors' shouts exploded into the retreating air. Shapes darted outside, menacing forms slipping through the shadows, leaving chaos in their wake. The world outside his home had turned into a hunting ground. "Move!" Grace urged, her tone fraying, pulling at the frayed edges of his sanity. "They intend to take the children, and it's not what you think. Stop it!" Leonard barked, the grasp of disbelief tightening around his throat. "Just tell me the truth." And that's when the beggar woman stepped closer, her voice steady but laced with gravity. "You have to understand, Leonard. You've been protecting a legacy, a darkness that could destroy them." "What?" His heart began to pound louder, panic coursing through his veins, drowning out logical thought. "What do you mean? What legacy?" With a swift movement, she reached into her coat pocket and produced a heavy, worn locket. Leonard squinted at it. Memories rushed back, swirling in a potent whirlwind of sound and silence. A family he thought had been lost, connections buried in shame. "Open it," she urged. "You'll see the truth of who you are, and who they really are." Before he could respond, another crash shattered the moment. The doorway splintered further as dark figures poured into the room, chaos erupting around them. Leonard barely had time to react as they surged forward. But in the haze, the world twisted and blurred. In that fraction of a second, the locket fell from her hands, crashing against the floor. As it hit, the room ignited in an unbearable white light, washing over everything, blinding him momentarily. Then, silence. When Leonard blinked back to focus, the beggar woman lay crumpled beside him, eyes closed, face eerily pale. The world felt strange, different. The locket lay open, showing a photograph. A family they didn't belong to, but there were faces he recognized. Faces he didn't want to see. Every truth he'd fought to bury, now unspooled before him. A raw nightmare stripping him of every assumption he'd made. Grace's breath caught, eyes pooling with shock. "Leonard, I didn't know." He staggered back, vision narrowing as realization slammed into him. Nothing was ever as it seemed. "This is about more than just us," she murmured, voice breaking. But what had been unleashed? Leonard felt trembling uncertainty gnaw at his core. All binding threads unraveled with one shattered moment. What reality was he facing now? Outside, the chaos raged on, yet for once, Leonard found himself lost in the depths of a truth he hadn't wanted to know. The flickers of history imploded in the remnants of his world, urging him forward, deeper into the shadows of the past, leaving him desperate to uncover where it all led. As Leonard stared at the locket, the chaos of the room faded into the background. His heart raced as reality blurred. What truth lurked within that small golden frame? What had he lost to the shadows of his past? The beggar woman lay still, her energy flickering like a candle in the wind. Grace's face was pale, eyes wide with uncertainty. "Leonard," her voice quivered, "you need to open it." Tentatively, he reached for the locket, fingers trembling as he flipped it open. The photograph inside felt cold, but their faces were familiar, people he had almost forgotten. His parents. The reflection looked back at him, their young, vibrant smiles contrasting sharply with his own haunted visage. And then a wave of realization crashed over him. Why are they? Words escaped him, suffocated by the weight of unvoiced memories. He hadn't just lost Emily. He lost the connection to everything that had come before, a thread linking him to a world he had wanted to forget. The shadows in the room lengthened, as if they were alive, creeping closer. Outside, the sirens grew louder, blaring through the silence that hung like a thick fog. The chaos was escalating. "We don't have time, Leonard." Grace pressed a hand to her chest, urgency lacing her voice. "They're coming." "Who?" Leonard asked, eyeing Mark's still body, disbelief morphing into dread. "What are you talking about?" "I told you," the beggar woman whispered, her voice like a ghost. "You're not safe here." Just then, a thunderous crash echoed from outside, followed by the sound of men shouting. The door trembled on its hinges, ready to splinter. Leonard caught a glimpse of chaos unfolding beyond the house. A dark mass gathered, moving with purpose. "I've seen this before," Grace cried out, panic spilling from her lips. "I know what they want." Before he could ask what she meant, a sudden surge of bodies piled through the entrance, a wave of darkness flooding the room. Figures clad in black, faces obscured. Their presence was suffocating, like a suffocating miasma, choking the air around him. "Get down!" Leonard shouted, instinctively throwing himself in front of his children. He could feel their tiny bodies pressing against him, a fragile barrier against the turmoil surrounding them. Amid the chaos, one figure grabbed the beggar woman, yanking her back with an icy grit. "You've led them right to us," a voice roared, echoing with outrage and something darker. Leonard felt a chill race down his spine. "What do you know about her?" he demanded, a surge of protectiveness filling him as he squared off against the encroaching threat. But before he could react, The man's mask slipped, revealing a familiar face, the very face Leonard had tried to bury. David, his childhood friend, smirked with malicious glee. "You're all so naive. Did you really think you could escape the truth?" Leonard's heart sank. "David, how are you—" "Stop playing the victim," David spat. "You sealed your fate the moment you walked away. And guess what? That legacy can't stay buried. Your children—" "Shut up!" Leonard's voice cracked, raw with pain, desperation clawing at him. "You can't hurt them!" David's laughter rang hollow as he stepped closer. "They're just the beginning. It's time to collect." Leonard felt a surge of dread. Collect? What does that mean? Then came a sudden silence. The room pulsed with an uncomfortable tension as all eyes turned to the beggar woman, who lay motionless, the color drained from her face. She wasn't who you thought." "Don't!" Grace screamed, gripping Leonard's arm like a lifeline. But before anyone could breathe, the beggar woman stirred, a low groan escaping her lips. One eye opened, revealing an inexplicable familiarity. "Leonard," she whispered, her voice heavy with truth, "you're not ready for this." Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook, the walls shuddering as a violent pulse raced through the house. And then, from the shadows, came a flicker. Another figure stepped into the room. Only it wasn't human. A silvery wisp, fearsome and vast, unfurling like smoke. It surged forward, swallowing the beggar woman whole. A blinding light emitted, drowning everything in strange colors, while the ground beneath Leonard's feet cracked open. "No!" he shouted, reaching out, but the light consumed everything, pulling him into an abyss of noise and chaos. Families intertwined and destinies unraveled in the grip of a dark legacy. And then silence fell. When Leonard opened his eyes again, the landscape had transformed. He found himself in an unfamiliar room, the faces surrounding him distorted and confused. The weight of realization slammed down. Everything he thought he knew was shattered, and a single terrifying truth emerged. The true nature of love, loyalty, and betrayal suffocated everything in their path. As their frightened eyes met, a chilling question hung in the air. Who had he really lost? What was he willing to sacrifice to uncover the truth? Everything he believed was at stake, and now he didn't know if he was ready to face what awe. The fear in the air felt palpable, like a storm gathering strength. His eyes darted around the unfamiliar room, taking in the faces as they loomed closer, distorted by shock and confusion. Grace stood there, panic etched into her features, while the darkness struggled to disrupt any semblance of peace. "Leonard," her voice trembled, weighted by the urgency clawing at her throat. "We need to get out of here, now!" But just as he felt the pressure building all around, something unexpected sparked in the depths of the shadows. It felt like a memory surfacing, uninvited, voices he hadn't heard in years echoing through him. He turned sharply toward the beggar woman, who hadn't moved since the explosion, her stillness chilling him. "You have to wake up! We need you!" he shouted, panic roaring through his veins. With a sudden jolt, she stirred. The look on her face shifted from pain to something sharper, something that seemed to slice through the chaos engulfing them. "Leonard," she said slowly, almost a whisper, "you need to fight for them." Before he could respond, a loud crash echoed through the house, rattling the walls. The front door burst open, and a new figure swept into view. This one emanated an aura of authority that sent chills down his spine, detached yet commanding. It was an uninvited presence, but strangely familiar. "Enough!" the figure commanded, a voice sharp as glass. Leonard squinted, and the haze dissipated just enough to reveal who stood before him. It was Olivia, his long-estranged sister, her expression a mix of anger and agitation. "I warned you. I told you to stay away." Olivia, why are you here? Leonard gasped, the world spinning again, as fragments of his childhood tumbled through his mind. Where have you been? But she barely acknowledged his question, her eyes fixated on Grace. You shouldn't have come. None of you should have. None of us? Grace echoed, disbelief washing over her. But before she could say more, Olivia lifted a finger, silencing the room. They're here, she said, shifting her gaze behind Leonard. As if she sensed a storm brewing just outside, fear prickled at his skin, a warning that something was approaching. Suddenly, without warning, the beggar woman began to rise, her body lifting as though held aloft by unseen strings. The energy in the room surged, sparking confusion and awe. When the light meets darkness, she started, but her words fizzled into a breathless gasp. Before Leonard could grasp what she meant, Olivia shouted, "Get back!" And then, something in the shadows surged forward, a swift realignment of reality, a flash of energy, a sound like thunder. Leonard watched in horror as the beggar woman's form distorted, rippling like water. In a blink, the truth unraveled. She wasn't who she seemed. As the revelation hit him, Leonard staggered back, eyes wide in disbelief. No, you can't be! But she was. The energy around her shifted, unveiling the truth. There was no beggar, just an illusion. The power within her cracked like ice, revealing a deeply buried sorrow Leonard had wondered about all his life. She was Emily's twin sister, the one he didn't know existed. "Hello, Leonard," she said, a faint smile twisting her lips. "I'm here to set things right." Shock flared in the room, words catching on the edges of everyone's lips. Leonard's heart raced. "What? How? You died!" Olivia's eyes blazed with fire. "She didn't die! She became something more, something powerful. And it's time for you to choose." Tension surged, an electric rush zapping through him. Everything he believed was riding a razor's edge. "Choose," he echoed, every word heavy. "Will you save your family, or are you ready to lose them again?" Outside, shadows gathered, darkening the air, heralding an unspeakable truth. The revelation left Leonard gasping, heart pounding. The choices he faced now weren't just his past coming back to haunt him. It was a bridge leading to a future he couldn't fathom. "Choose wisely," she uttered, the weight of her words crashing down, leaving him suspended between light and darkness, longing and fear. The stakes were higher than he ever imagined, and time was running out. Leonard felt the weight of the moment crash over him. The truth hung like a thread, ready to snap. His heart thundered against his ribs as he struggled to process what Emily's sister had revealed. "But you died. We buried you." The words left his mouth, trembling under the burden of denial. The chaos outside loomed, shadows gathering, threatening to pull them into an abyss. "Leonard, focus," Grace shouted, her eyes darting toward the doorway. "You have to protect the kids." The urgency in her voice ignited something inside him. "Emily, why are you here? What do you want from me?" The name felt foreign yet haunting, echoing in the swirling static of the room. "I'm here to save them," she proclaimed, a fierce light glimmering in her eyes. "You don't understand the legacy you carry. It's not just about you or me. It's about them." She gestured toward the twins, who were clutching one another, wide-eyed and trembling. The air was thick with uncertainty, clinging to them like smoke. "I won't let anything happen to them," he warned, fury bubbling just beneath his skin. "You think I'd hand them over?" But suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the locket on the floor, illuminating the room like a lightning strike. It crackled and sparked, drawing everyone's gaze. And in that moment, as he squinted against the sudden brightness, everything shifted. The figure behind Leonard lunged forward, breaking the tension like glass shattering in slow motion. "Leonard!" she screamed, her voice tearing through the air. But it didn't come from Grace. It was the beggar woman, no longer pale, but vibrant. "You have to—" Then the light imploded, casting long shadows that melted into the walls. A thunderous roar filled the space, and time felt frozen. Leonard's heart raced as the shockwave knocked him off his feet. When he hit the ground, everything swirled in kaleidoscopic colors. From that chaotic swirl, reality warped, reshaping everything before Leonard's eyes. The shadows folded in on each other, and a new figure stepped forth from the darkness, flanked by an ominous presence. "Surprise!" Mark's voice sliced through, clear and unmistakable. But it was different now. His tone had shifted, filled with mockery and twisted joy. The mask had been flung away, revealing a face that bore scars of betrayal. Had he been lying in the shadows this entire time? "Mark, what are you doing?" Leonard shouted, confusion raging as he pushed himself to his feet, pain radiating from his shoulder. But the twist came swiftly, like a knife in the dark. "You want the truth? You were never meant to survive this," Mark laughed, glancing between Leonard and the beggar woman. "You've protected them from something much greater than just pain." "Stop! What are you talking about?" Leonard gripped his head, the weight of his memories swirling chaotically. But there was no escaping what Mark held. He held a small device, blinking ominously, its purpose unknown but deeply threatening. "You've only been pawns in a game far older than you can fathom." Then, like a great exhale, things clicked into place. The forgotten history, the family connections he had buried in shadows and whispers. "I don't believe you," Leonard shouted, desperation clawing at his gut. The twins cried out, their voices piercing through the cloud of disbelief. "Daddy!" And that's when the bomb exploded. With a flick of Mark's wrist, the device emitted a shockwave, causing the very structure of reality to rip apart. The walls trembled, shadows flickering as the air turned electric. Leonard watched, hardening his heart against the truth, the betrayal burning in his chest. Everything you loved, everything you thought was safe, was just an illusion. Mark's voice thundered, echoing from the walls. As the chaos unfolded, Leonard felt the tether snap. Emily's sister, the beggar woman, they were fading, shadows dissolving like mist under the morning sun. "No!" he screamed, reaching out as the darkness closed in. It was as if the very essence of his past was erasing itself, leaving nothing but an ominous void. "Remember, Leonard," Mark sneered, the light flickering away, reality blurring. "Everything is a choice, and your choices will haunt you." As the darkness swallowed him whole, leaving Leonard gasping and hollowed out, he understood. The twins, his last hope, were trapped in a legacy far more complex than he ever fathomed. And just as the last flicker of light vanished, in that suffocating void, a single thought gripped him tightly. What if nothing was real anymore? Leonard blinked, feeling the weight of the moment crash over him. The truth hung like a thread, ready to snap. His heart thundered against his ribs as he struggled to process what Emily's sister had revealed. "But you died. We buried you." The words left his mouth, trembling under the burden of denial. The chaos outside loomed, shadows gathering, threatening to pull them into an abyss. "Leonard, focus!" Grace shouted, her eyes darting toward the doorway. "You have to protect the kids." The urgency in her voice ignited something inside him. "Emily, why are you here? What do you want from me?" The name felt foreign yet haunting, echoing in the swirling static of the room. "I'm here to save them," she proclaimed, a fierce light glimmering in her eyes. "You don't understand the legacy you carry. It's not just about you or me. It's about them." She gestured toward the twins, who were clutching one another, wide-eyed and trembling. The air was thick with uncertainty, clinging to them like smoke. "I won't let anything happen to them," he warned, fury bubbling just beneath his skin. "You think I'd hand them over?" But suddenly, A blinding flash erupted from the locket on the floor, illuminating the room like a lightning strike. It crackled and sparked, drawing everyone's gaze. And in that moment, as he squinted against the sudden brightness, everything shifted. The figure behind Leonard lunged forward, breaking the tension like glass shattering in slow motion. "Leonard!" she screamed, her voice tearing through the air. But it didn't come from Grace. It was the beggar woman, no longer pale, but vibrant. "You have to!" Then the light imploded, casting long shadows that melted into the walls. A thunderous roar filled the space, and time felt frozen. Leonard's heart raced as the shockwave knocked him off his feet. When he hit the ground, everything swirled in kaleidoscopic colors. From that chaotic swirl, reality warped, reshaping everything before Leonard's eyes. The shadows folded in on each other, and a new figure stepped forth from the darkness, flanked by an ominous presence. "Surprise!" Mark's voice sliced through, clear and unmistakable. But it was different now. His tone had shifted, filled with mockery and twisted joy. The mask had been flung away, revealing a face that bore scars of betrayal. Had he been lying in the shadows this entire time? "Mark, what are you doing?" Leonard shouted, confusion raging as he pushed himself to his feet, pain radiating from his shoulder. But the twist came swiftly, like a knife in the dark. "You want the truth? You were never meant to survive this." Mark laughed, glancing between Leonard and the beggar woman. "You've protected them from something much greater than just pain." "Stop! What are you talking about?" Leonard gripped his head, the weight of his memories swirling chaotically. But there was no escaping what Mark held. He held a small device, blinking ominously, its purpose unknown but deeply threatening. "You've only been pawns in a game far older than you can fathom." Then, like a great exhale, things clicked into place. The forgotten history, the family connections he had buried in shadows and whispers. "I don't believe you," Leonard shouted, desperation clawing at his gut. The twins cried out, their voices piercing through the cloud of disbelief. "Daddy?" And that's when the bomb exploded. With a flick of Mark's wrist, the device emitted a shockwave, causing the very structure of reality to rip apart. The walls trembled, shadows flickering as the air turned electric. Leonard watched, hardening his heart against the truth, the betrayal burning in his chest. Everything you loved, everything you thought was safe, was just an illusion. Mark's voice thundered, echoing from the walls. As the chaos unfolded, Leonard felt the tether snap. Emily's sister, the beggar woman, they were fading, shadows dissolving like mist under the morning sun. "No!" he screamed, reaching out as the darkness closed in. It was as if the very essence of his past was erasing itself, leaving nothing but an ominous void. "Remember, Leonard," Mark sneered, the light flickering away, reality blurring. "Everything is a choice, and your choices will haunt you." And just as the last flicker of light vanished, in that suffocating void, a single thought gripped him tightly. What if nothing was real anymore? Then something stirred. In the distance, a small glimmer caught his eye, the locket sparkling on the floor, catching light like a beacon. He reached for it, desperately pulling himself closer. But as his fingers brushed against the cool metal, a powerful surge of energy zipped through him. Suddenly, he wasn't alone. The air crackled, and with a sudden shift, he found himself standing in a completely different room. The familiar surroundings twisted and turned into a vibrant yet eerie place. And there they were, the twins, seated across from him, safe but confused. "Daddy, where are we?" Lily asked, her innocence piercing through the tension. But it didn't make sense. Why were they here? And how had things shifted so quickly? Leonard felt a lump in his throat, his heart pounding in fear. He scanned the room, and then, there in the distance, was Emily. Standing in a doorway, smiling, like she hadn't lost everything at all. Everything will be okay, Leonard, she said softly, her voice like silk. There was no pain, no loss in her eyes. For a split second, he felt hope. But then that flicker of joy dimmed as the shadows crept back in, twisting around her, pulling her deeper into the dark corners of the room. "Leonard!" she screamed, and as darkness tore her away, her true face emerged, not the loving wife he sought, but the visage of a shadow he had never known. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice echoing as if it came from the other side of a canyon. "You have to choose, but you can't." Then silence fell. The air grew thick, almost suffocating him. Leonard stood frozen, torn between the light, the dark, and what had just been revealed. The weight of it all crashed over him, realizing the darkest secret of all. What if everything he loved, everything he fought for, was never truly real? Darkness loomed once more. In that moment, one question pierced him like a knife. How far would he go to protect his children from an illusion crafted by his own disbelief? And as the light flickered, he prepared to plunge into the shadows once more, desperate to find the truth that was waiting to be unveiled. Leonard stood at the precipice of his fate, the weight of shadows swirling around him. He steadied his breath, each inhale grounding him, every exhale pushing back against the chaos threatening to overtake him. The twins, frightened yet brave, clung to his side, their innocent faces reflecting the turmoil inside him. "Do you remember the stories I told you about bravery?" he whispered, crouching down to their level. "This is our moment to be brave together." Lily nodded, her big blue eyes shimmering with trust. "Ethan," he felt a warmth spread through him, igniting a tiny flame of hope. "That's right. We face this together. No more running. We don't let the shadows win." But the chaos outside thundered, pounding like a drum in his ears. He turned to Emily's sister, the woman he had never known, seeing a familiar determination flicker in her eyes. "You said I have to choose. What does that mean?" "The legacy isn't just yours," she replied, her voice steady against the rumbling chaos. "It belongs to them too. They carry both light and dark within them. You have to show them the way." Leonard's heart clenched. "What if I fail? What if—" "You won't fail," she urged, stepping closer. "You've already chosen once to protect them. Do it again." Mark's shadow loomed, a ghost from the past, but as Leonard watched, everything came crashing together. The darkness wasn't his enemy. It was a part of the story, an unfinished chapter. Suddenly, the house quaked again, a final violent shudder clenching around his gut. He looked into the eyes of his children, and in that moment, he felt a surge of power. "We end this now," Leonard bellowed, gathering the strength of his grief and his love into a single blow. "Together," shouted Grace, joining him, her voice rallying like a call to arms. The uncertainty faded as they united, a circle of strength forged from their shared pain. "Now!" they shouted in unison, a hymn rising to drown out the fear gripping their hearts. The shadows flickered, contorting under the swell of their resolve. A brilliant light erupted from the locket, a radiant beam piercing the darkness like the dawn breaking over a long night. The pulse of it was alive, thrumming with the heartbeat of 1,000 stories, past and present, converging in a moment of truth. Leonard reached out, hand extended, feeling the energy crackle through his fingertips. "Family, love, light," he cried, pulling everyone closer around him, enveloping them in the warmth of their unity. And then, everything changed. The darkness began to unravel, like threads pulled from a tapestry. Mark's sneer melted away, his form fading against the brilliance surrounding them. "No, this isn't how it ends," he howled, but his voice faded into nothingness as the light drew inward, enveloping them. Leonard felt the tightness in his chest loosen. He turned to his children, their faces radiant, free from fear. "We did it," he whispered, and in their smiles, He saw a future unfurling, untethered from the past. And just like that, they were standing in a vast, open field, bathed in sunlight, where shadows no longer loomed. The world felt alive, pulsing with possibility. The weight of the past had lifted, replaced with an exhilarating sense of hope. He realized then that the scars would remain, but they were no longer chains. They were marks of survival, badges of honor in a story that had just begun. The light began to dim, swirling back into the locket, leaving a soft glow around them. But with that light, a mystery lingered, a tantalizing question humming in the air. What would tomorrow bring? As Leonard looked around, his heart swelled with love. He was ready to face whatever came next. They were alive, together, and stronger than ever. But even as the scene brightened with promise, a voice echoed softly in the breeze. Remember, the shadows always return. And with that thought, the screen faded to black. This is the moment to show your support. You must subscribe now to never miss an exclusive story that delves deep into the mysteries of existence. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the magic alive. Your voice matters. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know this ending. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel with these actions. Grab hold of the moment.